time to get started with this HumanIK skeleton. The HumanIK window can be found under Windows, Animation Editors, and it's HumanIK right there. And have it loaded up here. So I'm going to start by creating the skeleton. Then I'm going to go Shading, X-ray joints, and I'm going to position. Initially, I think I need to make some movements just to make sure this character is centered in the scene correctly. Because if HumanIK is saying this is scene center, I'm going to respect that. And I'm also noticing that I did not ensure that the character's feet were planted, or the new feet that I created are planted. So I'm going to take this global control and move my character, move it back so it's also in the center of the shot, like that. And I will freeze transforms. I don't think this impacts any of the, yeah, fine. Okay, so I'm going to go, I just activate Shading, X-ray joints. I'm going to move the character just a little bit further back. I want the hips to be in the accurate position, and then I'll deal with everything else. Okay, so about there is good. And I'll freeze transforms one more time. And then now it's time to move the HumanIK skeleton. So I'm going to move the hips, ensure that they are at a reasonable location. There should suffice. Okay, and I'm only going to position one side to work, because that's how we usually work with HumanIK. So I don't have to worry about this side just yet. I'll mirror the changes over when this side is done and I have all the orientations fixed. So I'm going to now start moving the thigh joint to be positioned correctly. So about there seems reasonable. And I want to make sure that this is, let me go to the right view, is in about the center of this sphere. That's where I want to swivel from. And then make sure that this foot is right down the center of the volume. Now this is an unconventional foot, so I'm going to try as much as possible to make the joints simulate somewhat of a real foot, but it's going to be really weird because it's really tight, right? But I'm going to be using auxiliary vectors to create all the foot functionality that you expect in a fully functional rig. It's going to look weird on this really small one, but when we move to the next robot that has a more traditional foot, you'll see the benefits of it. But right now, all the choices I'm going to make over here will seem weird because there's no actual foot, but just bear with me. All right, so now it's time to start positioning these spine joints. So I'm going to take these spine joints, and I know how I want these sections to move. So I definitely want this to be a pivot point. And I'm pretty sure I might end up making some choices with this. I'm going to center pivot here. And I'm going to start swiveling this. Yeah, this is something I should have taken into consideration. There definitely needs to be some more geometry here, like the way I did the under part of the arm. So this is one modification I appear to have left out. I'm going to Shift P, get it out of here, do some more modification to this thing. Just really an extrusion is what it comes down to. Let me clear out some of these additional faces. I'll just select all and then deselect this and just delete. We get the rest of this. And then I'll take the edge and extrude downward. And I'll do the same for the top. And extrude upward. And maybe two sections should be enough for the skinning. So I'll put one section here, maybe just an additional one here. Actually, this might be a little bit more difficult to add an edge loop there, but well, a simple way to deal with it is just to select. I could use the split polygon tool, but I think a simple way to go is just to select these vertices. Up there, right down here. Just move them up a bit. Just to give this more, the part of it that will receive an edge loop more room to dominate the length of the torso. But if I did want to put an additional edge loop here, I could use the multi-cut tool. Like that. I think it's fine. I don't think I'm going to do it. Or maybe I should go to the right view, frame, and then use the multi-cut tool to just add an edge loop like that. So just to give this a little bit more topological integrity, I suppose. All right, this should be enough. We'll do one more thing. Let me go to the right view. Grab these verts and just give them a bit of a rotation. Like that. It's not going to hurt. Okay, that should be good. Go back into perspective, and that should be enough geometry for skinning. So I'll delete history, freeze transforms, and put that back in here. And I don't know why I've called it spine 4. This should really be spine 1. This should be 2. And this should be spine 3, chest. Okay, yeah, I just want 3 spines. So now I'm going to take this joint, go to the right view, make sure it's at around where I want spine 1 to rotate. Now, right now I'm moving, when I select the joint, I don't mind that the entire child hierarchy is moving, but if I do want to move just the joint without the hierarchy, I just hold down the D key and I'm able to do that. Right, move the joint without the hierarchy moving. But right now I need the hands to keep getting higher because we're going to get to them shortly. I need them to be a little bit better aligned. So now it's time to position the chest and go to the front view. And so the chest is going to be around there. That's where I want it to swivel from. This looks really weird to have. I might need to reevaluate where I want this spine joint to be. I just want them to be evenly distributed. So I'm going to try to put it here. I guess that's why I put all these edge loops here. I think that this has enough geometry to allow for a good amount of deformation here. Or maybe not. Let me take a good look at it again. Yeah, I might need more information over here. Didn't realize how much of it is obscured. So go back to adding more information here. I think with this piece, I might remesh it here. So let me actually just duplicate it. I just want something with better topology. I'm going to hide this original. I'm going to go to the modeling menu, go mesh and remesh, and I'm going to hit apply. This will be great for deformation, but it's a little messy. So I'm going to see what other options I have. All right, I'm going back to ZBrush. I trust ZBrush better with this mesh to give me some good topology. All right, so I'm now in ZBrush, and I'm just going to take this mesh and I'll start at maybe 2 and do a Z remesh. And that's a lot cleaner. So this will really work. So I'm just going to send this back to Maya and use this for skinning. If I run into any other meshes that look problematic, I'll just do the same thing. Actually, I am going to undo this because I do want a symmetrical mesh. So I'm going to do it again with symmetry this time. Okay, it's not, actually let me just try it. I'll do it without symmetry and I'll mirror in Maya. Along the symmetry line, I think that should be fine in Maya. All right, so I'll export this back to Maya and continue. All right, so now I'm back in Maya and I'm going to do the mirroring here. This will make mirroring my skinning a little bit easier. So I'm going to just right click, shift right click and do a mirror. And this is not bad topology, so I'll keep it. And that should be fine. So go back to positioning the skeleton now that I have a good mesh. So this appears to be a good position to swivel from. Or not, I might want to go a little bit higher. So I'm going to hold on the D key so I can move this, get better distribution. I care more that the distribution is a lot more even. So this I'm going to move a little bit higher, just a little bit. And yeah, that appears to be a good amount of distribution over there. All right, so now it's time to position the shoulder. So the shoulder, go to the front view and move it till it's at, let me hit the 4 key. And about there, there's where I want to pivot from. And back. And then the actual upper arm was, the head of the humerus was somewhere around, where's that mesh? Let me find it. Yeah, I think I about have it. I'm going to temporarily hide this so I can just gauge better where the head of the humerus is. So I had to restart my machine, and I just want to point out that when it comes to HumanIK, at some point in time, the HumanIK skeleton generator has to be deleted when you're done positioning joints and picking how many joints you want. Because for some reason, whenever you shut down the file, the HumanIK generator will reset the skeleton. So whenever you have to close and reopen the file, just expect that all the positioning that you've done is going to be reset. I'll go over how to do that when it's time. I'm going to continue positioning this. I'm going to go to the front view and I'm going to make sure that this is traveling right through the arm. And I'm going to take this and temporarily hide it, which is what I wanted to do before the machine crashed, to just create a layer, just so I can get this upper arm joint where I need it to be, maybe around there, the center of the sphere. And the elbow, I can put this in here too temporarily, just so I can get the elbow at a good point. And this lets me know that I should move just a little bit down and bring this back and hit the 4 key to find out where my palm is. The base of my palm is going to be around there. You can see the geometry in there. I'm not going to allow the hand to control this big module, this big thing here. The hand is only going to control this in here. This is technically what I'm believing should be the hand, the palm. So this is the only thing it's going to control. All right, so before I get the fingers down, I think the arms are pretty good. Well, not entirely. I do have to go to the top view and ensure that I'm traveling straight through the arm. So this is the shoulder. I'm gonna make sure I move it forward so it's traveling right through the center of the arm. This has to be close. There's a little bit of a misalignment here. Let me see if it's problematic enough to warrant a fix. I don't think so. If I go to the bottom, yeah, that's fine. I don't think this warrants a change. Yeah, this is fine. These minor misalignments are okay. They're not going to break anything. All right, so now let me get the neck. So the neck is really extended forward. I'm going to isolate these pieces of geometry to help me better position the neck. So the neck is going to be, let me go to the right view and hit the 4 key so I can move this forward until I get about the base of the neck, a good place for the neck to swivel. And that is good enough. And this is the head, and that would be significantly lower. I'm going to try to keep actually I have the neck wrong. It's supposed to be right at the pit of the neck, right there. And the head, it's not going to hurt to have it just a little bit forward. So I'll move it. I'll create them as an alignment. I'll break that straight line just to get it at a spot where that feels anatomically correct. But you want the head to swivel at around underneath the ear. That's usually a good place for the head to swivel. So I'll bring everything back. And yeah, that's a good start for the body, head, neck, and when I restarted, I left the spine joints the good distribution that it comes in by default, and I'm going to stick with that. I think that's going to be fine. All right, so it's time to get these fingers done. Before I start positioning the hands, I want to make sure that I have the right number of digits. This character only has 4, and the one that's not being used is the ring. So I'm going to take that out and check this right here in the skeleton tab to lose the ring finger. And I'm going to select the entire hierarchy and select these fingers. Let me see if there's an easier way to gain access to all this stuff. Nope, I lost my groups. So I'm just going to select them one by one. Yeah. And I'm going to isolate them like so. And the way I like to do the fingers is go into all 4 views, and let me make this selection again, and I'm going to isolate them in all views, and this just makes it a little bit easier to get them in exactly in their position they're supposed to be in. So I'm going to start with the thumb. I'm going to grab this and move it until it's in the center of the thumb. I'm going to make sure I go shading x-ray joints here so that the joints can show through in all views. Shading x-ray joints, shading, okay, so that's all of it. So this, I can now position the base of the thumb, and it can be actually in the exact central region that I need it to be in. And I can move to the other knuckle, position it like so, and it's right in the center. Might want to hit 4 in some of these views. Yeah. And this is the tip, so it doesn't actually need to control anything. It's just the end joint. But this right here, let me see if I actually might have made a mistake. Yeah, I think I've made a mistake. This right here should be at the first, should swivel from here, right out of the palm. Right. This is not a human, so I have to make intelligent decisions that would make the animation look believable. So it's not like I'm making anatomically correct positioning. I just have to make sure it matches the modeling choices. So this would be the next section of the finger, and that should sit in here. I think that's about the central region. Okay. Then the next one would sit at the next knuckle. So I'll position it in the center. Right there. And that's about the central point. And then this would be the end joint, the last one at the tip right there. So that should sit at the tip of the finger. And I want to make sure I get it correct in all views. That's how you can ensure that you have actually positioned it correctly. If I just focused in these three views, and perhaps I should turn this one into the bottom view because it might be easier to, it's easier to see what's going on. And if you look in the perspective now, it's perfectly positioned because it's in the right place in these three orthographic views. So let me do with the next, the forefinger. So the forefinger, I'm going to place the first one at the base here. It seems to be in the correct position there. And then here it's going to be there. So it looks correct in all these orthographic views, and yeah, it's centered correctly. We'll move to the next one. That looks pretty right there. And so is over there too. I'm gonna get the next one, which is, let me see, it's this one, I think, yeah, it's this sphere right there, yeah, right in the center. And then the last one goes to the tip of the finger, it's the end joint. This is incorrect. I'm going to hold on the D key and make sure it's somewhat fairly straight. You know, like here, and make sure it's at about the right place. And here it should be at the tip of the fingers. Okay, so that's that. All right. I'm going to speed through as I position the rest of them. So that's it. The fingers are positioned, and that marks the end of the positioning of the skeleton. Everything is positioned where it's supposed to be. I'm going to check these hips right here. The thigh is where it should be. Knees where it should be. And yeah, everything is good. It's time to make a very important move. And this is what will ensure that this skeleton stays intact. So I have to delete the HumanIK skeleton generator. And I'm going to go into the definition tab and let you see that the definition will still be valid even though I'm about to delete the skeleton generator. So I'm going to go to display and then uncheck DAG objects so that it shows me everything. And I'm looking for that right there, the HIK skeleton generator node, and I'm going to delete it. Doing this skeleton is disconnected from the UI. So you cannot make any more changes to the number of joints and things. But the definition is still valid, but you just can't use the UI to add additional joints. If you want to add more joints and stuff, you have to do it manually with my skeleton tool. So now it's time to fix the orientations of the skeleton. Before I do that, I'm going to select the root, isolate this, and I'm going to delete one half of it because we're going to mirror this over. And I'm going to select the root again and right click and go to select hierarchy. I have the LRA tool here, it shows the local rotation axis, but I'm going to activate it through the joint orient tool just to show you that it's accessible there. So I'll go skeleton, orient joint tool, and I can turn on local toggle visibility of local rotation axis. Most of them are right for the most part, but one good thing to always do is to, don't worry about the settings just yet, we're going to reset all of them. So with all of them selected, I'm going to go orient to world and go apply. Actually, they all appear to be oriented to world already. So if I select this and I right click and I go select hierarchy and go apply, yeah, they're all oriented to world already, which is good. And now I'm going to pick the standard LRA orientation that is required for a rig like this. For the most part, you want the x-axis traveling along the chain, and the y and the z-axis will be the secondary axis and the world orientation axis. And to get that, what works for me, or most of the time when you're setting up skeletons, is the primary axis is x, the secondary is y, and then you pick x as this third one, and you want this to be positive. So I'm going to run this on all of these just to get an initial result. So let's see what this setting gives us. If I hit apply. Okay, so now as I watch, all the x-axes are traveling along the chain, which is exactly what I want in some areas. In other areas where I didn't know what to do, it's made this mistake here, but I'm about to fix it shortly. The next thing to do now is to fix the ones that are truly broken manually, right? The two that are truly broken is this one right there for the chest, and also this one for the hips. I want the x-axis to travel in the same direction that this one is traveling in. When the control is created, I want to make sure that the chest control is oriented to world axis, and the orientation of this underlying skeleton will dictate heavily how the control systems are oriented. So if I make this x-axis travel up the neck, the control might end up being angled, and I don't want that. To fix this manually, what you have to do is activate this right here. This is the select component type, and then you select miscellaneous. These LRAs are classified as miscellaneous. So now that I have it selected, I can physically rotate it. And let me make sure that I am at the very least matching. Well, I want to make sure I'm exactly matching the one beneath it, which is oriented to world perfectly. So I'm going to rotate it like that. And there are many ways you can reorient this thing. You can use orient constraints, unparent things, and use orient constraints, and you might see me use that further down the line. But I think for this particular one, it's a lot simpler to just do it like this. I'm gonna make sure it's flush. And that's good enough, right? That's gonna be fine. Nothing is gonna break with that. I'm gonna do the same thing here. Make sure it's traveling. Let me go to the right view. Look at the hips. Then go to the front view. Yeah, that's relatively straight. That's good. The chest and the hips are fixed. Now with this neck, I'm wondering whether I should leave it like this so that the control is oriented like this, or whether or not I should have the control oriented to world. I don't think it matters too much. It's not going to hurt either way, so I'll just have it traveling down the chain. The head one definitely needs to be fixed, and to rotate it so that the X is pointing upward, just to be consistent with what I have. I'd prefer if the head was perfectly oriented to world. So I'm going to do that. Like that. Go to the right view. Yeah, just make sure it's straight. As close as to straight as it can be. Okay. That's about good. All right, and all these look right. The hands look right. That looks right. Let me go to the foot and see what's happening. With this foot, it's definitely better to have it oriented towards world, in my opinion. Right. The foot control is going to come in, and when your rotation tool is in object mode, the foot control is going to be oriented like this, and I don't really like that. So I'm going to go to the right view, and I want this thing to always be oriented in the way a foot control is expected to be oriented. So that's sort of like a world axis orientation. So like that. You'll see why this is important shortly. And even though some end joints is not that important to get them oriented, I always like to do that because I want to make sure the end joint is behaving like everything else. Because when you select a hierarchy and try to rotate it, the manipulator always takes the orientation of the end joint. So if it's a mess, it will be oriented weirdly when you try to rotate an entire hierarchy and the end joint is not correct. So this is about the orientation I want. X-axis pointing forward, still down the chain if there was another end joint here, and this one at the foot oriented towards world. So that gets all of these correct. All right, so with the fingers, you notice that a majority of them are doing the right thing. Let me show you what I'm talking about when I say that if the end joint is not oriented correctly, you end up with this weird behavior when you try to rotate an entire chain. Let's say that I'm skinning this and I want to test the finger, and I select this joint. Let me go back to component, get out of component mode. If I select this joint and I right click and I say select hierarchy, this manipulator will adopt the orientation of the last joint in the chain. So if it's wrong, you get this weird rotation behavior, right? So you always want to make sure it matches the parent joint. I think there's a very easy way to do that, but with the orange joint tool. But before I do that, let me make sure that this entire chain is going to rotate correctly. That feels incorrect for a reason, because it looks like some of these are not consistent. So with this one, I'm going to deal with them manually, right? Just to get them. If I get out of component mode and I select this, okay, I can rotate it. That is a reasonable rotation. All right, that's reasonable too. And if I add the last one, yeah, this is fair. Let me look at the finger and see if all these rotations yeah, it'll be fine. It's more important that this chain though, these two here, yeah, that is reasonable behavior. Okay. Now, once again, there are many tricks you can use with orient constraints and copying and pasting values from the rotated values into the joint orient settings. But for me, it's just a lot simpler to just go into component mode and just position these manually. So I'm going to rotate these to match the parent, like that. And that should be enough. So if I was to select this entire hierarchy now, let's say I select from, let me turn off the selection of geometry. If I was to select this and I right click and go select hierarchy and I start rotating this, now I can do test a lot easily because the end joint is matched to its parent. But it's important to understand that this is not necessary. Even if you leave them as is, HIK is not going to have a problem. Like, these don't impact how the controls are going to behave. This is just so that, just to make things simpler for you when you're trying to use the select hierarchy command. So I'm going to go over here and get the rest of these joints in order. So all of them look good. Well, actually, no, they don't look good if what I want is for the y-axis to point up. So I have to go back into component mode, and I'm going to select this, go back, and I will need to isolate my skeleton again. I'm going to go into component mode and select this and just orient it in the way that my thumb is oriented. Come here, do the same thing here. I'm going to do an interesting test shortly with a way to determine if your thumb is behaving correctly. So this one also manually like that. Okay, that looks reasonable. So if I was to select here, go select hierarchy and rotate, yeah, that's reasonable behavior for the thumb. Let me try it here too. Yeah, it's reasonable thumb behavior. Right. Again, I can get away with a lot because this is not a real humanoid character, so the specific way a thumb has to behave, I don't have to deal with that with this character. Typically, you do want, when your thumb rotates, for it to be pointing towards the pinky. For a real human, that means this would have had to be pointing towards that as it rotated, but here it's not important. This is a machine, it doesn't matter. All right, let me get the rest of this stuff. All right, that should be it. If I bring everything back, select this joint, right click, select hierarchy. That's reasonable behavior for the finger. Side view, yeah, that's reasonable. And I'll do the same thing here. Right click, select hierarchy. This is also reasonable. That is it with the orientation. I think everything is oriented correctly, and it's time to mirror this over. All right, before I proceed, I like to do a little check. Even though I know I didn't do any rotation, sometimes I just want to be sure. When you're positioning HumanIK skeleton, in the past, one time I remember having these decimal values in rotation. So I'm going to make sure that the rotations are all 0. I'm going to select the root and hit down. And the only transforms that should have values are translate. Joints are allowed to have translate values. So that should be fine. I'm going to select here and hit the down key, and all the rotation to be 0 as I step down. Good. Check this. All rotations are 0. Even if you didn't rotate, maybe by mistake you could have activated the rotate tool and ended up doing a very minuscule rotation. Do here. So now it's time to mirror. I'm going to go to skeleton, grab the mirror joints tool. I do want to replace all instances of left with right, so that's already in here. And the mirror function, I want behavior. That is what allows you to, I don't think it matters so much with HumanIK, but if I was doing a real rig, I definitely want it to be behavior, because if I select both arms and I rotate them, I want them to rotate in a reasonable manner. I don't want, well, let me show you what I'm talking about. If I grab this, and I do want to mirror across the YZ plane, so I'm going to hit apply, and then I do apply here too. If I select this upper arm and I rotate upward, I want the arms to rotate upwards. right? I don't want this one to rotate upward and then this one to also rotate in the same direction and this one to rotate downward. So this is the type of behavior you want. If I hadn't done that and I had instead done let me grab this and I do orientation and I do apply, then when I select these two and I rotate upward, then they both rotate screen right. I don't want that. I want the feet to rotate outward if I'm rotating like this. At least that's the kind of behavior that you expect from a rig. Go to behavior and hit apply. Yeah, and in order for that to do that properly, you'll see this opposing behavior of the LRAs. You see the Y is pointing down here, Y is pointing up here, and that's what allows it to behave correctly, like this. Yeah, appears to be some weird thing happening. Nope, it's fine. Check this again. Okay. Yeah. And if you do end up with some rotation values in here, you would need to freeze transforms. If you like, you can just use the freeze transform tool to only target rotation. But if you freeze transforms on joints, they're not going to clear their translation values. When it comes to joints, they always need translation values. That's how they work. That's how I think the system knows where they are in I think world space. Yeah, just freeze transforms and just ensure that these are all zeroed out. All right, the next thing to do is reconnect this half back to the HumanIK UI. So you'll notice that none of these are connected, and it's obvious why, because these are just mirrored over. So I'm going to isolate this skeleton, and then to connect it back, all you have to do is click on the bone and then double click on its respective representation in the HumanIK UI. Now, for this shoulder, actually this shoulder, I have to be careful not to call this a shoulder. This is my shoulder right there. I have to dig in here and make sure that I'm connecting this to this first shoulder joint. Click here. Okay, looks like the connection was made. And then come back out here, and this is the upper arm, so I click on the upper arm. And it's definitely a double click. All right, so I click here, double click. All right, so when it's connected, you see the green. So I'm going to dig in here and do the fingers. Well, be very careful because this is, yeah, this is my thumb. I have to be very careful. So the thumb, double click here, double click here, double click. I think I even have to do the end joint. That might have been a mistake. I don't think, I was pretty sure you needed to do that. So if I click here and double click, okay, it doesn't work like that. All right, let me get the rest done. I was pretty sure in the past I had to connect to this. Looks like I don't. So I'm gonna click this and get the forefinger done. That's weird. Click here, double click. This is the middle. And I want to make sure that this last one is connected to the pinky. Simply because that's how I labeled it. All right, so that should be right. And if you have if you're confused about how to connect things here, just look at what the other side has. I'm pretty sure if I dig in here, yeah, the other side is the same way. Yeah, these end ones do have to be connected. me see what's going on. If I select this, yeah, it does select that end one. So I'm gonna go over here and try to figure out what's going on. But I do want to connect this palm. So I'm going to click the palm. Oh, I think I did make a mistake here though. I forgot to orient this wrist. So I'm going to, I think I should be able to do it. I'm going to grab this and just make sure that this wrist is pointing. I want to make sure it's pointing back like this, and yeah, to get that behavior. Yeah, you gotta be careful and make sure you have everything. I'm gonna do the same thing here. This one definitely is supposed to be pointing down the chain like that. Let me go to the top view. Yeah, HumanIK I don't think will scream at you for doing things like this. I'll go to the top view again. Make sure yeah, that's fairly accurate. And I'll do the same thing here to make sure. Yeah, this one is just a little bit crooked. Yeah. I'll go to perspective, and then I'll run a quick test if I was to select both wrists in object mode, and also rotate them upward. That's not, oh yeah, it's not correct because I have Y pointing incorrectly. It's supposed to be pointing upward. All right, so I'm going to go back into component mode and rotate. It's good to check all the time, make these mistakes. You can always come back and fix them, but the earlier you catch it, the better. HumanIK is, you can, after you've created the control system, you can completely remove it and recreate it several different times. It's a very robust system. Things are really easy. And now that I think about it, some of these ones are not right. So I'm going to fix them manually. Just want it to be perfectly perpendicular. And I'm going to fix it on the other side too. It's good to look in the top axis to make sure everything is behaving correctly. Perspective, and just because now I'm paranoid, I'm going to go check the feet to make sure, yeah, all of these are fairly straight. There's no weird, except with this one. It's really not a big deal. It's not going to break anything, but you want your orientations to be as good as they can be. These ones are bent, so they're fine. Actually, in this particular instance, I might want to leave them alone because there was a slight rotation backwards because I moved these knees back. The hands, on the other hand, I do expect them to be straight. I try to keep going for a relatively straight result. Let me go back to these connections. So I'm going to click on this wrist, double click there. Now I'm going to find out why these end joints are misbehaving. If I dig in here, go down the chain. Okay, this is where things are wrong. Made an error here. So I'm going to clear this. And go again. And I'm going to select this, assign, go down the chain, assign, like this, assign, and that's just a little bit more. clearer for me instead of this double clicking thing. This double clicking thing is just, yeah, I made a mistake and I forgot about the first joint in this chain. I'm going to go clear, 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 and make sure that I'm selecting the actual first joint. Assign, assign, assign. It's a very easy thing. I don't know how I messed this up. All right, so we're going to go to that one right there. Let me see, yeah. Clear all this. Sometimes all these nodes here gets confusing. Assign, let me make sure that's correct. Okay, grab this. Assign, like that. Assign. So I'll start with the first one. Assign here. Assign here. Assign, and by the grace of God, assign, yeah. All right, so that's it for this hand. It took too long to get that done. All right, let me get out of here and click here. Assign, assign, and I want my foot. Let me get in there, make sure I'm connecting to the right thing. Okay, that's it. Assign, and when you go, okay, it's definitely not this. This is the toe base, and I think that's what this should be connected to. But to confirm, I'm going to go to the other side and make sure that when I select this, yeah, that's the toe base. So I'll come in here and select this and go assign. So the entire definition is connected, and the fact that everything is green means we're in good shape. Before I proceed, I'm going to create the custom joints that are going to control all these additional appendages. Since this is done for the most part, I'm wondering if I should hide the local rotation axis just temporarily. So I will do that. I'll take this, right click, select hierarchy, and just turn off the LRAs. I have it in my shelf here. So I need to create custom joints for this. Let me make geometry selectable for this little metal drapery, and this, which I've forgotten to mirror, which I should probably do right now, and this antenna-like thing, and then these speakers. And I think that's everything. There's no other custom joint required. I'm going to take this, shift right click and mirror, and do the same thing here. Hit G to repeat the command. And I'm going to start with this. One of the ways that I like to easily orient joints to appendages that are at a weird angle is with clusters. Let me show you how I get it done. So I'll isolate this, and then I'll select vertices for the front and back of the asset, like so. This allows for a cluster to be created from this that puts itself right in the middle of these selected vertices. Let me make a better selection. So maybe I'll go this entire thing so that it puts the cluster in the center of the selection. That's what it's going to do. So if I go under my rigging menu and I say, I think it's skeleton, no, it's a deformer. So I go deform, and let me tear off my cluster menu. And if I create a cluster, it puts the cluster right in the center. And I can do the same for the bottom side where I want the other joint to be. So I select that, and then I create another cluster. Now these clusters are not needed. They'll be deleted after I finish creating the joint, but this is how then the joint is created from the cluster. So I can isolate these two clusters now, and I can go to my joint tool, create joint tool, and I can V-snap to the clusters, and I'll get a perfectly oriented joint. And if I select hierarchy and turn on its local rotation axis, it should have at least the main joint pointing down the chain correctly, and I can very easily manually adjust this one to point in the same direction in the front view. And this is not necessary, it's just something I like to do to get a nice clean result for the end joint. All right, so this is now the control system that will control this hanging banner. Now I can take this piece, because it now has history, and I can delete history to get rid of those clusters. All right, so they're gone. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go around and get all of them like that. The next one is this one, these two. So I'll isolate it. Select these vertices. No, I want vertices, not vertex faces. So select these and go to form. Looks like I closed the menu. Go apply, and then grab these vertices and go G. Nope. Don't have enough vertices. I need to select both sides. And I want to make sure I land right at the center of the volume and go apply. So now I have two clusters, and I can isolate them. And snap joints to them. Let me go to my menu. Okay, I can just delete history. All right, I'm going to speed through as I get it done for this, that, and the speakers. All right, so I'm back to do the last one. And just, you can even make bigger selections if you want. In this instance, I'm actually going to keep it to the lower half because I do want it to swivel from the base. So I'll go, it did crash by the way. Go to form, cluster options, so I can keep the window open, apply, and do the same vertex here, apply, select these two clusters, go to one of my reading shelves, and okay, and I can delete history. Solo this, right click, select hierarchy, show the local rotation axis, go into component mode, select miscellaneous, and orient this correctly. All right, so now it's time to name all these joints. So I'll call it J&T Pel Metal Waste Cloth. check it. They should all have no rotation values. So they're fine. No transforms have to be frozen. They all look good. One thing I forgot to take into consideration is what side they're on. They're on the left side. So I'm going to just select all these newly created joints, go to modify, go to search and replace names, replace the term JNT underscore with JNT left underscore, and just unselect it and apply, and that should make them all left. There's something I used to be worried about doing at this stage, but I no longer am, and it's parenting this to the chain. These joints are going to be converted into control systems by replacing, their shapes are going to be replaced with a curve, right? This is how you can avoid creating complex network to house the controls and these joints. And in these instances, since these are just basic FK controls and all that's required of them is rotation, it's an ideal opportunity to use these joints as controls, right? So they can be skinned to, and then they'll have controls to move them around. But before I do this, I am going to parent these custom joints to the skeleton. This is a very important thing when it comes to HIK. If you're creating your own custom joints, under no circumstances should you parent them to the control rig that we're about to create in this tab, right? They won't work, it'll just break. The HIK system is really complex, and you could be using FK and IK at the same time, and it's just really weird. If you try to parent any of these custom joints to it, you'll get some undesired results, right? So all custom joints, at least for the projects I work on, I always make sure I parent them to the actual chain. So I'm going to start by selecting this and parent it to the parent joint is supposed to be connected to, and that's the hips. And this one is supposed to be connected to the forearm. So I'll go parent, and so is this one, parent. And I used to be worried that HIK wouldn't know what to do with it, but HIK will work right around it. When you create these controls, it will leave all these alone and not touch them. All right, so everybody is parented, and now I'm going to create its counterpart on the other side. So I'm going to go to skeleton, mirror joints, and this is exactly what I want. I did use an uppercase for the left, and just for the sake of being consistent, I'm going to change that to a lowercase. So I'll select all of these. I just want to be consistent. And then I'll select hierarchy. So I will, another way to select hierarchy is to go select dash high, and it will select all the child joints. And that to get all of them. So if I do a modify, search and replace, I want to look for every instance of left and replace it with left lowercase. I'm gonna select it, and that's fine. So now when I go to skeleton and I go to mirror joints, this operation will work really well to get the other side. Yeah, and there it is. It's parented correctly, it's oriented correctly. So if I was to select this waist cloth and try to rotate them together, I get this type of behavior, which is what I want. So I'm going to do the same here. We'll apply. That is not what I want. So it looks like maybe for this one, I'm going to do this. In order to just to help get it to the other side, I'm going to shift unparent it, and then just temporarily parent them to the core. And get them to the other side of the mirror tool. So I'll go apply and apply. And now I can just select all of them and Shift P to unparent them from the core and parent them back to the forearm on this side and that side. Okay, so should be good now. Actually, I forgot about these guys. So apply, they're fine because they're connected to the core. And so that's all the custom joints connected to the HumanIK skeleton. One thing I should have done as soon as the skeleton was created was rename this. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to go right here, go rename, and make sure I call it Blackspire Studio Robot. Okay. It doesn't like, yeah, that renaming thing is definitely something I should have done before deleting the HumanIK generator. That's probably why it's shooting errors at me. But I'm going to have to do all that renaming now. So it did it for the first 3 nodes in this hierarchy. I'm going to hold down Shift and click on this, and then click on this to expand to get all the other nodes. And then I'm going to select all these nodes here. It's probably going to return an error. What I'm going to have to do, I'm modifying search and replace and look for every instance of character 1 and replace it with Blackspire Studio Robot. And just unselect it and go apply. Okay, so that's fine. And I probably also want to use that prefix. It's a really long name. That's fine, I'll keep it. I already went with it. So I'm going to use that prefix for the new joints I created, actually for the new joints, just so I can select them easily. I'm going to use a different prefix. So I'm going to go to prefix hierarchy names and give it a prefix of BSS for Blackspire Studios and called custom JNT. Okay. And now I'm going to have to do the same thing to get rid of the previous JNT. I should have taken that into consideration. I'm going to go JNT underscore and replace JNT underscore with nothing. And go apply. And now I have to replace the underscores with the two underscores with 1. And that should be fine. But now I have named twice on some of these. I don't know how that happened. So I'm going to select these and just go BSS custom JNT underscore BSS custom JNT and just replace that with BSS custom JNT. Go apply. All right, so that's proper naming of everything. The next thing I'm going to do is turn these custom controls into their final visual result, because as I said, they are going to actually be themselves controllers. Now that my LRAs are fine, I think it's time to hide them. So I'm going to select all of these. So I'm going to right click, select hierarchy. To use this command. If you right click on a single joint and do that, it will only select the hierarchy for the single joint. So I'm going to go select -high to select all the hierarchies and turn off the LRAs. And to create the custom joints, all I have to do is create a NURBS curve, NURBS circle. That's what I'm going to use for all these elements. So I'm going to create a NURBS circle at world. And I'm going to minimize this skeleton hierarchy network. I'm going to go to display and display shapes. And then I'm going to go into the shape node of this curve, select it, and then select the joint that I want it to act as a visual representation for. So this one, and I'll go parent-r-s. Okay, so now that curve is now the shape node of this joint. And I need to get to it, so I'm going to frame, and it gives me access to the curve. And let me solo it. And I can go to control vertices, scale it up, and orient it through its components, and that should suffice. So that's how I'll control this. So if I select the curve now, I can control that joint. And when everything is said and done, all I have to do is come into the attribute editor and hide the draw style of the bone. So I go to bone and go none, and then it's gone. And I'll do it for the child too. But for now, I'm going to leave them visible. So I'm going to go bone. Right? But when all these controls are created, I'll hide them, the draw style, or when the skinning is done and this thing is complete. So let me do another one. So we can do one more time, show you how it's done, and then I'll go through and do it for all these custom ones. Let me do it for maybe that one, a different type. Or actually this one, this is very important. So I'm going to go circle, grab the shape node, grab the joint, go into mail command, hit up to run the last command, and I can isolate the shape, go into the component mode and start scaling it up. And go like that. Continue to scale it up. I want it to be easily selectable, so it's going to be out here, but I know that its root is at the core. And I could also use object to better position this. All right, so yeah, that's it. And it will swivel from the core, but it's selectable at a higher location. All right, so I'm going to go through and do it for all these custom joints. All right, so I got all of them in. Now, before I start color coding them, I did forget one more custom joint, and that's, well, two more. Well, four, there's two on each side. It's the eyelids. So they're also going to be controlled with a joint, and this one is a little bit simpler. All I'm going to do is create a joint at world, and then I'm going to make the joint match the transforms of each of these eyelids. So I'm going to match this one to the top eyelid. So I'll go modify, match transforms, and I just want translate right now. I'm going to go apply. So it sends the joint over there, and I can duplicate this one. Well, before I do that, let me rename it. The prefix is BSS custom JNT, and this is top left, or let me do left top eyelid. And fortunately, the way this is set up, the other bottom eyelid also has the same pivot, and I do want to preserve that pivot for the bottom eyelid. So I would duplicate this, and I would have the bottom eyelid, have this one as bottom. And I'm going to take these two, and I'm going to increase their radius, which is not really that important. Actually, I'll have them have different radiuses. One of them will be slightly larger than the other, just so it's selectable. I'll make the top one slightly larger. And they're also going to be replaced with a sphere shape. But for now, I'm going to now parent them to the head so I can get the other side. So I'll select both of them and parent them to the head. Then now it's time to mirror them. So I'm going to go skeleton, mirror joints, and make sure I replace every instance of left with right, apply, and get the bottom one, apply. I'm just going to do a short test of how I would expect them to work. I'm going to actually skin them, but this is how they would actually work. Let me just take this eyelid and parent it to the top one, just temporarily. So if I do a parent, then I'd be selecting the eye, which is about to change to a control, and then this is how I'd be opening the eye. And I should also be able to rotate it to make him look angry, right? Or sad, or some other type of expression. So just wanted to show that. But right now I'm going to replace them with shapes, just like I did all these other control systems. So So I will create a nerve circle. Sure, I go to it, go to its shape, select the shape, select the top eyelid in this instance, and see if my command is still in the system. It's not, so let me hit up one more time, and there it is. So I'll parent that control to the eye, frame, and go into component mode, and just scale it up. And I will move it up so that it's very clear that it's intended for the top eyelid. And I'm wondering whether it should, right now it'll obscure the geometry, so I feel like I should move it up so it's a lot higher, so it doesn't get in the way when I'm trying to inspect what I've done visually. Yeah, so I'll keep it up here, like so. I'm going to get the rest of them done, and I'll speed through that. So that concludes the work for the eyelid, and now all the custom joints are in and functioning. The meat of the work is done. Before I proceed, I want to test the control rig to see if it's going to be problematic. Usually at this stage, it's time to skin things, but I definitely want to see what the control system is going to produce first before I start finalizing the skinning. So I'm going to save. Back in the day, I was really cautious about attaching things to this skeleton before finalizing the definition and creating controls, but HumanIK is very good about leaving your stuff alone and not breaking anything you have attached. So I'm going to lock the skeleton and test everything's still working properly. So I'm going to create control system, and there it is. It left everything alone and created a very nice HumanIK control system. I'm going to go through and see how everything is working. That looks good. These are the IK fingers. They're working nice too. And yeah, everything is going to be fine from the looks of things. This is my neck control, or no, I think it's my spine control. I don't know what it's doing all the way there, but it doesn't matter. I'll increase the size so I can select it a lot easier. And yeah, I think it's fine. So I just wanted to do a test to make sure that there wasn't anything blatantly wrong. I'm gonna go back to my previous file and focus on doing the skinning work. And I like the way it left all my controls alone. And test the head. And let me test this chest. This is something I don't like. When I go back to my file, I might see if it's the chest control, the FK control, and the way it's oriented is really weird. I don't like it at all. So I might go back and see what orientation it has. I really thought I had straightened it so that the x-axis is pointing up. Maybe I can't alter it and this is what it's going to be, but I'll try to see if I can. But yeah, it looks good. Hips, yeah, everything works well. Didn't break anything, and yeah, I'll go back to my previous file and start the skinning. All right, so it's time to skin this thing to the joint system. I'm going to start with the head. I will admit this is going to be relatively easy because this is a robot. There's very few parts that need to have more than just one joint influencing it. Most of these are fairly simple. I think this one is the one that's going to be shared by two joints, and so is this little ball here, this femoral head. Aside from that, I don't think there is actually anything. Well, yeah, and then the palm too. This palm geometry needs to be shared by the palm and the forearm. But other than that, it's going to be relatively simple. So I'm going to grab my bind tool, and because of how simple it is, I'm going to use selected joints, closest distance, And I'll use dual quaternion because it holds volume a little bit better, and the places I'm going to use it, I would like for it to hold volume. The rest of them I'll leave as is, maintain maximum influences, skin cluster, whatnot. So I'll select the head and select the head joint. Let me go apply. And now I should be able to select the head joint, and it should be able to rotate the head. Okay. And I'm going to do the same with the neck. Select the neck. Select the neck joint and apply. And now the neck joint should also be, the neck should be controllable. I do wonder if I should distribute the influence of the neck between the neck and the chest, and I think that's probably a good idea. So I'm going to undo the bind, and yeah, I think it should be distributed, perhaps even across the head. So I'm going to select the head, the neck, and the chest, and then I'm going to select the neck and go apply. And this should distribute between all of them, yeah, and it holds in place better. And if I want to see what the weighting looks like, which is fine from where I'm seeing it right now, I can go to my skin, paint skin weights, yeah, and it will tell me what the distribution looks like between the three of them, and that's fine. I'll settle with that. What matters is how it looked like when I was deforming it, and it looks really good. The next thing I'm going to do is get the eyelids, so the top eyelid with the top eye joint, and apply the bottom eyelid, go apply, and I'll grab this one, go apply, and then I'll grab this one and go apply. So now I should be able to use these controls to control the eyes, yeah. So the eyes are working, and what I really wanted to see was if I rotate them like this, and what this is doing, yeah, I can make him angry like that. So this is gonna be really cool to make them a little bit more expressive in the back. By default, I definitely probably don't want them to be closed. But yeah, this looks a little bit lazier. So this chest mesh, this entire chest mesh, I expect it to be controlled by just one joint. So I go over there and hit apply, and then I'll test it out and see what we have. Yeah, that looks good. This is going to be controlled by these two. I think it'll do a good job of distributing, but just to be safe, I'm going to do closest to hierarchy, because that ensures that bones on one side don't try to reach over and influence geometry on the other side of the center line, the YZ plane. So I'm gonna go apply and then test it out. This is how I want it to move, like that. Yep, it worked out pretty well. And I doubt I'm gonna use this because it just really subtle. I was hoping to use it to do some really small movements so that it doesn't feel so stiff. Here, I'm gonna do the same. This one is the one I really want to see how it works. So if I grab this, yeah, it's like an antenna. And I'm definitely going to use it to create a lot of overlapping animation. All right, and when I select the chest, I should be able to move it all, yeah. And this shoulder, and it's pretty much all of these should be skin to the shoulder. So if I go apply, let me see what that looks like. Yeah, moves the entire shoulder. I left one item, which is this, the actual humerus head, which I apparently forgot to mirror. So here I'm going to shift right click and mirror. Okay, and delete history, and then make sure it's actually, I don't think it's supposed to be, yeah, it's not supposed to be connected to Yeah, I was about to make a mistake. It's not supposed to be connected to the shoulder. The humerus head goes with the humerus bone, the upper arm bone. So it goes with that. If I go apply, then I should be able to rotate like that. Yeah, that looks right. Right, and then the shoulder, be able to move it. All right. This one is a bit complicated, so I'll come to it shortly. I'm gonna do this one. Make sure it's skinned. And do that one. Hit apply, and then I should be able to rotate them. Yeah, that looks good. And that looks good. So everything's working. All right, another simple one to get is the elbow. So the elbow goes to the forearm joint. So I'll hit apply, and yeah, that's fine. I'm gonna hold off on this one. This one is a little bit more complicated, but I'm going to get these fingers. So these fingers, and I think they're extending across both sides, so they are supposed to, the knuckle and the last digit section of the finger go to this joint. So if I rotate, yeah, that looks about right. And then this and this would go there, and this would go there. So if I was to test this out and I rotate at the root, everything rotates. If I do a select hierarchy and I rotate, the whole finger rotates, that's correct. And have proper rotation of the fingers. All right, so I'm gonna speed through these ones. I actually have to be a bit more careful with this one. I did kind of make somewhat of a mistake. I want to make sure to select both joints and make sure I bind to both joints on either side, because the geometry is shared on either side, but the joints, I have to actually select them. So it makes it just a little bit more tedious, but that's fine. So I'm going to go apply. I did it the first time around, but for the rest I didn't. By the way, here's a tip when it comes to selecting joints that you're planning on skinning. You notice that if I was to select geometry and joints, my manipulator tool is active to perform a transform. It's best to use this select option so it gets rid of the manipulator so that you don't make any minor rotations by mistake. As long as it's not there, you can go around selecting as much as you want, and then only activate it when you need to run a test. The hands are done. I'm going to get to this shortly. Let me get some more of the simpler ones. Everything that is going to span across a handful of joints and that I know I'm going to need to do some painting for, I'm going to hold off on. This one is going to be skinned to the spine 2. So if I rotate spine 2, I get that. This hip is going to be skinned to nothing but the hip. So we get this type of behavior. All right, so now it's time to come down here. This is another simple one. So I'll grab the thighs, both thigh, hit apply, and fine. And this one is another simple one. It goes to the shins. That's the knee. I hit apply, and it's probably going to, yeah, go with it. These ones over here are also simple. We go with these two joints, apply, and I should be able to move them. Okay, so now starting down here with the more complex ones. This one, this shin joint is going to be skinned to the shins and the foot. So I want to see what type of interpolation I get. Apply. So if I select this foot and I rotate it, yeah, it's fairly weird. I might have to reconsider that, but let me select the foot, select the shins, and also apply and see what it looks like. So I don't think that it's going to be that much of an issue, because these extreme poses I'm testing out, this is pretty much will be a broken foot for this character. I only really need it for like really subtle movements. So I don't think that that geometry that's behaving like that is going to be that much of a problem at all. And I think that this is, it definitely needs to be weight painted. I do want to assign some of the weights over here more to the foot, but I'll get to that shortly. Let me go get the rest, and then I'll come back and start doing some weight painting on just one side so I can mirror to the other. But for the most part, the foot is attached. Let me select these two and rotate them and see what I get. Yeah, that looks good. Yeah, that looks fine. All right, the next complex one up is this one, this ball over here. It's going to be this shared between the thigh and the hip. I'll make sure I get this thigh too, and go apply and check to see what it's going to give me. And yeah, it's also gonna need some good amount of weight painting to ensure that this travels with this with the thigh a lot better. All right, so we'll get to that. Let me check the other side. Yeah, that also needs some of that weight painting. Next is this, and this one, in my experience, I think it should be wired to all the spine joints, the hip, the two spine joints, and I'm contemplating the chest, but I think I'll leave the chest now. I'll just do the hips and the two spine joints, spine 1 and spine 2, hit apply, and then see what this does. Much, and then, yeah. In this instance, I might have to do a little bit, I'll have to do a fair amount of weight painting. Actually, now that I think about it, I am not going to bind it to all of them. I think it might just be best if it was just bound to this one. I don't think it should deform. No, I'll leave it. And I'll leave it to these three. I'll just do some good weight painting to ensure that a majority of it is weighted to this joint, so it's fine. The other complex one is, well, the last complex one is this one. So that's going to be skinned to the forearm and the hand joint. And I'm going to go apply. So right now, forearm is going to move, but most likely if I move the arm, it's going to try to deform this entire hard surface, and that is not something I want. Yeah, I want it to only deform this part in here. So that's also going to be weight painted. And I think that's it. So it's time to do the distribution of the weighting for this stuff. Yeah, definitely don't want this to move and detach from that. Okay. All right, so if I select core, everything should be attached with the exception of, okay, those two things. There are two things in here. I just saw a cylinder. I don't know what it's doing, but let me grab this and skin it to the hips. And let me find out what that cylinder is. Okay, it's the splitter here. Completely unnecessary piece of geometry. It's not needed at all. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to Shift P. Really just delete it. I don't think I need it at all. Yeah, it's not going to show at all. So I'm just going to put it in the trash. And move this thing one more time. Okay, seems to be some. Oh, the eyes. I have completely forgotten about the eyes. And they are supposed to be skinned to the head. And then there's, I think, this piece. Yeah, that's that piece. And I haven't even mirrored that piece. So I'm gonna make sure to take this, Shift right click and mirror. And then make sure to delete history. And make sure it is skinned to the chest. Move. Okay, moves with everything. There's yet another smaller piece. Mirror that. And that is also something. Actually, I think with this one, I might skin it to the speaker joint right there. So I'll go apply. And most of this is not going to be seen. I don't think these characters. Yeah, this is not something that should have been probably moving. I'm not too concerned about it because it's going to be viewed mostly from here. All right, so that should be everybody. If I select the root, keep forgetting the eyes. Let me see if there's an easier way to access them. It's not easy to find them. Let me select, that's one, and that's the other one right there. Okay, so I'm gonna hit 5. And with the two eyes selected, I can select the head joint and apply. So if I select the head joint now and I move it, okay, the eyes move with it, and we're good, and we can still use the eyelids. And everything is scanned. Okay, so it's time to do the weight painting for the parts that made it. So to do the weight painting, I'm going to start from the bottom and go up. So I'll start with this one and go skin, paint weights, and I'll open the paint weights window. And this is how much influence the shins have over this piece of geometry. I don't like that. I'm going to select a majority of these vertices, specifically the ones at the bottom. Let me isolate it first. Select all the vertices on the bottom. And that paint weights tool is on my shelf. Mirror skin weights is here. I'm going to be using that too shortly. But it's also in the menu up here, skin, mirror skin weights. So I've put both of these things on my shelf, and that's the paint skin weights tool. It's also there for some reason, I don't know why. But I'll bring this back, and all those vertices I have selected, I want them to be weighted to the foot. So I'm going to go replace with a value of 1, and I'm going to go flood. That's a mistake. I was looking at the opacity set to 1. I need the value set to 1, like this. So if I go flood, now that foot has exclusive control of that lower region. I'm going to test it. So when I take the foot and I move it, yeah, it holds its volume a lot better. And I think that's about as much as I want to do over here. To get it over there, one thing I like to do is keep the weights tool on. This is just to make sure that my mirror tool is set to go on the right axis. So I'll select that, and that's awkward. Okay, this has the same weighting over there, and this has that. Okay, I'm going to now activate my mirror skin weights tool. I want 1 to 1, and I want closest point on surface, and I want to go across the YZ plane, and it should be going into this direction. So I should see changes here when I hit apply. Yeah, and now that side is fixed too, and it's just like the left side. Yeah, it's deforming correctly. I'm going to isolate it and do similar thing. Look at the weights and look at how much influence this has here, and make sure that all of these vertices, all up here to about that point, maybe not too far down, maybe about there. Yeah, because I do want the foot to impact some of this a little. All right, so I'm going to make sure I turn off symmetry. Yeah. So it's not selecting stuff on the other side. And then I'm going to go to the paint weights tool and yet again do a flood with replace active. So that floods that. So now when I'm rotating the foot, it should not rotate anything up there. And that's good. This one is broken, but if I select this and I go mirror weights, now this should also be fixed. Yeah, and nothing up there is moving. So the foot is sorted out and looks good. The next one to deal with is this. So with this one, I'm going to rotate. I'm going to go to the channel box and rotate this away. And all I ultimately want is for these vertices, almost everything here, let me select these vertices to have a full weighting of 1 to the thigh so that they go with the thigh as it rotates. Right. So let me just add that one to it. Go to the paint weights tool and select my, okay, I seem to have clashing names here. That is not okay, so I'm gonna go check that out. So I'll take this and make sure that it has a full weighting of 1. So I'll flood that. And actually what I'm going to do is take the entire, both of them, the vertices, make sure they are all weighted to the hip first. So I'll do a flood. So there's a full weighting of 1 there. And then I will then select this edge now, entire edge this time, go to vertices and ensure that it is weighted to the left leg with a full weighting of 1. Actually, I don't want the bottom side to be weighted with a full weighting of 1. That might need lesser weights. So I'll get rid of this and weight just those ones up there with a full weighting of 1. And that should be good. And then I will take these ones at the bottom and let them have a weighting of maybe 3 and flood. Okay. And then with the rest of them, the rest of these rows, I'm going to also shoot for a weighting of about 0.3 flood. And then from here on out, I'm just going to smooth the result to get a nice transition between the two. So I'll come here and I'll flood, smooth, and potentially also do it to this row. So I'll go over there, and I should be able to flood. All right, and then I'll take this because this transition looks like it's suffering a bit, and add this to the bunch. Make sure nothing down here is selected, because I do want this to have a full weighting to the eye. And then go to the paint weights tool and smooth, so I get a better transition. And that's about good. So now when I go here, whenever I rotate this leg, this will move and not create a hole. And that's good enough. So we'll zero this. I'm going to select that and mirror and make sure it's going to the other side. And for the life of me, I don't understand why everything on this side has a left when I very clearly rename them to have a right side. So I'm going to have to rename some of these. So I'm going to grab these joints here all the way down here. And if that's the case here, I won't be surprised if, yeah, all this is left. That's really weird. Very weird. Everything is left. It makes no sense. All right, I'll just grab this root here and grab this root and go select dash high, selects all the children. I'm pretty sure when I mirrored the skeleton, I had left to be replaced to the right. Maybe it missed it. Yeah, I probably used a lowercase and it missed it. I'm going to go modify, search and replace, and I just want to make this change on what's selected. I'll look for all instances of left and replace them with right and go apply. And yeah, there is no error. There shouldn't be. And for something like this, I can strip away this. Yeah, everything should be fine. All right. The next complex one to deal with is this one. And I'm going to go to the weight painting tool. Actually, let me just isolate it first. And really with this one, everything at the core, I believe, should be weighted to the spine joint one. So I'm going to grab the entire core right there. And even maybe more. So I'll grow the selection by hitting shift period to about there, maybe there. And then I'm going to go in here to the weight painting tool and have spine, that's definitely the one I'm looking for. It will be highlighted. Yeah, that one. And I'm going to flood, do a replace with a flooding of 1. So by doing that, now this has almost sole custody of all those vertices I chose, and I like the transition. Right, it's not that complicated. Yeah, this will work. It does limit his range of motion though, a little. Well, not really, because from the front you can't see it, so you can get away with really overlapping it with animation and it won't be an issue. So that's done with. And that leaves now these fists. With this one, first thing I'm going to do is solo it. Grab all these vertices and designate them to the left forearm right there. Okay, so the left forearm is going to take everything, so I'll go flood. And let me test that out. So now the left forearm should control it also. If I move the hand has no control over any of it. And then I can grab this. And for this one, it might be easier to paint it. So I'll grab this weight paint tool, select the left hand, and set a value of 1. 1 is about what I need. and do a replace, and then just come over here and paint what I want the hand to influence. About there, just a nice little transition. Careful. Okay, so that's about it. So now if I grab my hand joint, yeah, it should move with that. And I'm going to leave this here, select this and do a little bit of a smoothing. So I'll grab my weight paints tool, select the hand, do a smooth and then flood. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I will smooth by hand. So I'll go like this and just smooth this transition. So I get a little bit of a better interpolation there. And then I'll do the same thing to the bottom by rotating upward and doing some more smoothing. I think I should be fine with flooding, because flooding it helps to make some really nice transitions. So if I was to flood with smooth, yeah, it helps to make a significantly better transition. A lot of this geometry will definitely have to be smooth if it causes an issue, but this won't because it's hidden behind this. So this will work. And the smooth will help it look a lot better. Or softening of normals, right? But I think it's fine. It's good. So I'm going to zero these out. And now it's time to mirror the result. I will have the weight paints tool open and select this just to watch the change happen as I mirror. So I'm going to go take my mirror tool and go apply, and yeah, change transferred over. So I think that's it for the weight painting. Everything should be painted and we're good and ready to go by adding the control system to it. And if any weight painting issues rear the ugly head, they'll be fixed. I do find that maybe I do want a little bit of this to be controlled by the hand, but maybe not. Maybe I'll just focus on ensuring that I pose these fingers not to clash. But if it comes down to it, I will weight a little bit of this and a little bit of that to the hand. But I would hate for the hand to be moving and for a hard surface like this to be deforming. So I'm probably not going to do that. If I was to pose like this and cause an issue, I'd be moving the hand in to show that there's limited range of motion for those fingers. It's time to create the control system. I'm going to go into the HumanIK window and I'm going to hit the lock key to lock the definition. And then I'm going to activate to create the control system. And I'm pretty sure everything is fine. Yeah, these are working as expected. And this, yeah, is working. Any problems where the ugly head, it will be fixed. And I do want to see how this spine is going to behave. So that's the hips. First FK, yeah, that looks good. This fine. Let me see how that looks like from the front. Yeah, that looks good too. Chest. works. Let me see if I select the chest and I go, well, it is a world axis. Okay. So making the neck go that forward has impacted how the chest is going to rotate. So I will more often than not be rotating in 2 axes to get it to behave correctly. Yeah, that's, or not. Like, well, yeah, if I go into world, if I go to rotation, actually, no, 1 second. Let me go to this, go to world axis. It'll still activate 2 rotation channels because of how it's oriented, but at least I can pose from left to right the way I want. So it's not that big of a deal. And all this stuff is working in conjunction with the HumanIK system. All the custom joints are working. So I can grab this and move it and then play with all the custom joints. Yeah. Everything is good. Check this. You have to be very careful with the range of motion of this particular item. And the head. Yeah, that works well too. All right, so next thing I'm going to do is start hiding these joints for the custom bones. So I'll come over here and set it to none. And I should select the child and set it to none too. Let me see if I can do it at the same time. If I select hierarchy, no, I can't. It has to be done one by one. So let's go none, none. Grab this, set it to none. I think I can actually do it all in one sitting. I'm going to, let me do this one first. I'll go to the attribute editor, select each of these custom joints one by one. That, this, that, and also the one for the eyes. And that should be all of them. So if I go select dash high, selects all the children, and I can go window, general editors, attribute spreadsheet, and I have to look for draw style. Under all for draw style, I hope it has a recognizable name. Check some of these other regions to see if it's just accessible in one of these areas. Let me do an attribute filter, see if I can do a draw style right there. It's a draw style, so I'll just set to none. Should be able to just select this and type or type 0. No. I'm going to do a create sets, quick select sets, and just add this selection to the shelf temporarily and go look for the exact name of this. Yeah, it's none. Let me select them again. Set this to none. Yeah, that's weird. So what if I said joint? That's weird. Anyway, I'll just do them manually. The other thing I'm going to do is make sure to lock and hide all their translation channels because they're simply not needed. So I think that's all of them. And I forgot to set this to none. Do it shortly. So I'm going to lock and hide translation and actually scale. I'll leave radius and just in case I need to do some additional work. Ultimately, they might be. I'm actually going to lock and hide. Okay, so that should lose all of them. And make sure this is set to none. none, none, and none. And now I'm going to color code them because they're not really standing out. So I'm going to have the display drawing overrides. I'm going to enable this color. And for the top one, I'll pick a maybe more vibrant. I'll stay away from green because green and white are popular colors for selection, and maybe yellow might not be it too. Oh, I think yellow will be fine. So I just want to be able to distinguish the top from the bottom in this instance. So I'll make the top yellow and the bottom a very high value blue, like that, light blue, like that. And so I can distinguish between both controls. And then for this stuff, all right, that should be it. And then with here, I don't like the way these controls are overlapping, so I'm going to grab the control vertex, activate object mode, and move the components to get a shape that doesn't overlap across the center line, maybe something like that. I'll do the same thing here with control vertices. Move it first one time, add these two to the selection, and then move them like that. So we don't have a messy UI, and it should be fine. I'm going to get started with a hand-keyed animation test that I'm going to export as an alembic. As I mentioned, that's mostly how this character is going to be utilized. I'm going to animate in a file, export as an alembic, and import into another file, and use that alembic with mesh to generate several instances of him. I'm first going to go to the frame 0, and with HumanIK, if you want to set a key on everything, you just have to select this full body. And if I was to select this, say on frame 0, if I set a key, it'll set a key on every single one of these. So every one of HumanIK's controls have a key, but my custom stuff won't have any keys. So I'm going to create a selection of a script that just selects all my custom joints, all controls, including the blink stuff. And that should be all of them. And I'm going to, I really could just take the mail script with all of them. So this is replace toggle, toggle, toggle. So it says replace the selection with the first one and add the rest into it. Or I could have created a quick select set, but I trust this script better. I'll delete this. I'm just going to rename it. I'll delete it and create a more customized shell for all the robots that are going to be used for this project. But for now, it'll be just like a temporary solution. So I'll say custom CTRL, let's call it custom, and tooltip, it's fine. I'll just save all shells. I'm pretty sure I must have left something. Okay, icon labels what I left. Cust CTRL, save all shells. Okay, so I'm going to save all shells in file, save preferences. And so now when I select that, it selects everybody and I can set a key. What I want to do is just pose it. It'll be on one side, like this with the weight shifted. And then it will shift its weight and change its expression. So I'm going to rotate these. And I'm going to turn on auto key, which is already on. So auto key is on. I'm going to have the character pose, very free form posing. A little bit more natural. Should be really simple. All right, and his eyes will be open. He'll just have a regular expression, and I will make sure to set a key and select my custom control, set a key. And then I'm going to go to frame maybe 120 and have him shift his way to the other side. And with an angry expression, so I'll have the eyes get angry, very angry, and turn off geometry selection. And set a key on everything again. Go back to frame 1 and make sure I add somewhat of a tilt to his head. The objective is just to move as much stuff as possible. So remove all this. Okay, that's 120 frames of animation. Now, window, animation editors, graph editor. It looks like the keys are already set to flat. That's fine. I'll take that. And maybe I'll just make it 150. And I will select this. Go to the first frame, middle click here, set a key. And so I get all my first, I go back to the first pose. So there's just some motion of everything. See what I can expect. From the animation and the upcoming lessons from this character. All right, yeah, I might be doing a little too much. So that's it, that should be fine. I'm going to save this and turn everything off and try to export my geometry as an alembic. So I'm going to go cache, alembic cache, export selection to alembic. I'm hoping I don't have to bake anything and I can just push this stuff and get the alembic I want. And I want to say time slider, so 150 frames, and go export selection. I'll be back with the import in another file. All right, it's working. This is a new file, and it all came through. For the most part, I think every animation I do on this piece will come through. So one thing that I didn't actually take consideration is the fact that the alembic format does not export or package the textures, or in this particular case, the materials that are applied to the faces. That means I wouldn't get all the coloring that I've done. That means it might not be the ideal solution for this particular character. All the other models being used as background spectators are fully UV'd, but as I mentioned in the beginning of this lesson, this was intended for 3D printing. I was hoping to be able to just apply materials to it without UVing it. Because it doesn't have any UVs, I can't write the UVs to an alembic file and apply textures. But that's fine, because what that means is that this particular asset will have to be exported as an FBX into the background file. I would turn off the control system or bake the animation onto the base skeleton and just send the joints and geometry to the background file. So I'm going to take a shot at an FBX export. As long as it brings in the colors, it might bring them in as blends, and that's fine as long as it keeps the color data on the faces. For an FBX export, all I would need is the geometry and the skeleton. This is the HumanIK control system. It packages it nicely, so it's not going to impact. And I'm going to do an FBX export and come back with a test to see what I get. And with the FBX export, I'm going to check this bake animation because I think it would be safe to use this. So animation is checked and bake animation is checked. All right, so here's an FBX export, and it does a perfect export of everything, and it even preserves the AI standard surface shader. So it looks like an alembic export will not be the solution for this. And if the other ones present any problems, at least I can count on FBX to bring everything in. Very lightweight too. The alembic cache file was very heavyweight. So that's it for this lesson. This thing is ready for animation. In the next lesson, I will repeat the process for this character. This character is a little bit more complicated. The complexities of this character don't come with the additional appendages. There are no additional appendages that require custom joints, but he does have this fit, which I'm going to simulate with nCloth. The character is UV'd and it has texture, so for this one, an alembic would be fine. I could write the UVs and then reapply the materials of the alembic. But if there are issues, I will be relying on FBX for the export too. But I don't think there will be. The nCloth can be baked and cached, and I'm sure either of those two formats should be able to support it. And this one has feet, so I'll be able to use pivot effectors to create some of the cool foot features you can expect to see on a rig, heel raise, toe raise, and the banking of the foot and things like that. But yeah, the most challenging thing about this one is it's going to require nCloth. And also the body is emaciated, and therefore I'm going to need to create somewhat of a body to collide with the nCloth intelligently. So I'll see you in the next lesson where I rig this urban robot by Mesh Chaos on cgtrader.com with HumanIK.